You ready? Hello. Hi, Katherine.
Hi. Hi. I love the countdown.
Oh,
I dramatic.
too. It was, I've never used it before, so I wanted to try it. I was hoping that I would have enough time to go copy the link and put it in the event and all of that. I did not have enough time during that 30 seconds.
Oh, right. Because it was, it's quick.
Yeah, it was, there just wasn't enough time. So
I like that it slowed down as I got closer to the live. It kind of slowed down. It's like da, 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 and then it came live. It was very event entertainment.
So we are live. It looks like we are. Oh, we've got Meg who says hello, ladies. Awesome to see you, Meg. We are very excited to talk about strip clubs and sports. It's an exciting day. So, I wanted to try something new this time. A friend of mine, Cher Jones, uses the idea, if you're live, do hashtag live. If you're watching this in a replay, hit hashtag replay, so that I know when you're coming in, I can sort of respond to your comments and such if you're watching it after the fact. We've got some comments here. Adam, can't wait to hear this conversation. We've got Jen from Michigan. Anna from Canada.
I need a better system with my keyboard and my screen so I can look at the comments also. But
we've got Christine.
Yay! Hello, everyone.
John from San Francisco. Oh, and Adam did the hashtag live. Awesome. So that works.
Oh, yay.
I'll be able to see later, who are the people who are coming in to watch it at the replay. It was amazing to me that last week's episode with Gabrielle, many of the views were actually coming in like a week later. And
really?
So we're still watching that episode with Gabrielle today. And I was like, that's fantastic. So I'm excited to get started with this conversation. And I'm so happy you joined me, Katherine. Really happy. Can you tell us, just for the folks that don't know you out there, a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Hello, I'm Katherine, and I live in Vermont. I've been feeling like I've been hibernating in Vermont, and I'm re-emerging to the world at large. I have worked on Wall Street, and I have worked in sports, and I worked at nonprofit. The through line being building things afresh and fixing things that are broken. Topic, not just because I worked in sports, but this topic is very near and dear to me, and Jen and I have talked about it a lot, and I'm glad to bring the conversation to the public.
So happy to have you. People are probably wondering why the topic is strip clubs and sports. And, when we first met, I know back in June, right? We had connected, but then I actually posted an article about, in this post-COVID world, whether we can leave strip clubs behind. And the reason I posted it is because I had some experiences with the old boys club, that there was a certain expectation that if clients asked you to go to a strip club, you had to make a decision. You had to decide, am I going to take them to the strip club? Or later in life, am I not going to take them to the strip club? And how am I going to explain that in a positive way that is not going to, lose me the sale, right? That old boys club of how far are you willing to go to get the sale? And you and I really connected on that post because of your experiences with the old boys club. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So yeah, Jen and I met, and then a couple of days later, she made that post. And because I was new to LinkedIn, I definitely did a soft comment like, "Oh, I kind of agree with you." And then Jen came with the power of her person and expanded upon it a little. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going a little bit more all in on this. So in Wall Street and in working in sports, they're very masculine-dominated industries. And so I have so many experiences. I don't want to talk about just one, but there have been so many times where you're in the situation you described in your article where we're all going out to celebrate. We're going to the strip club. Holy hates, what am I going to do? And so, especially as a young woman starting out in your career, you don't have a lot of power. You're not up the hierarchical food chain, and you have to ask yourself, as you did in the article, and I'm sure many of us on the call and people who have watched this in the replay have experienced, where do you draw that line for yourself? So how do you decide what are my values? What's the consequence of any action I might take, and where's my power? Am I an intern or am I a VP? And what are the implications of any action take? So as a young woman, I didn't feel like I had that many options. Just kind of went along with the flow, and then you make the decision as you did. Do I go? Do I not go? If I go, I don't want to be not safe for work, but if I go, damn, it's like there's so many conversations happening in your head, and you just kind of go with the flow. So I found it very uncomfortable, and that's why I very much connected with your post.
Yeah, and I so appreciated you being vulnerable and sharing your experiences with that, because it's one of the hardest things that when you share anything on LinkedIn, if you're sort of
Yeah.
putting yourself out there and you're all alone and sort of naked and exposed, right? This is what I think, but I also think these stories need to happen so that people start to understand the impact of these scenarios. There was another article that we talked about recently. I think it was what was it? It was Jessie. Can't think of her last name.
Oh, babe, yeah. About the
Yeah,
venture capital investment. Mhm.
yeah. Which she was working with venture capitalists, and she had a lot of that experience with the Old Boys Club. And I thought it was just really interesting the way she put it. It's not about, the shocking story. It's not. It's about how you support and elevate and inspire women, right, to be able to have that equality and have the same opportunities as men. And
Right.
I thought it was just a really interesting article. What were your thoughts on it?
I thought that line struck me as well because you and I and many others weren't shocked by the situation. It's that it's so normal that you're not shocked, which is shocking. That might be counterintuitive, but it's just
Yeah.
become the cycle, and people are so used to it in a variety of circumstances. Like maybe not everyone on this call has had to go to a strip club, but everyone, I'm sure, has been in situations where they've had to figure something out, and it becomes familiar and it becomes ingrained in the behavior of whatever culture you're in that's perpetuating these types of stereotypes, that it becomes the normal. It becomes, you're so used to it, you don't even think anything of it. And so when someone brings it up as a big deal, you take a step back and think, oh, actually, yes, that isn't such a great situation. So
Yeah, no, 100%. And, when I initially wrote my article, I was saying that since we're all talking about empathy, right, shouldn't we shift beyond this conversation about empathy? Or at least make empathy a
yeah,
two-way street, right? If we're going
right.
to lead in our outreach with empathy, how about the customers meet us and recognize that maybe that puts us in these uncomfortable situations? So
Yeah.
I found it really interesting. Christine Whitehead the other day shared with us that, that in Florida, they're doing a drive-through strip clubs. And it made me think, can you, like, like they've gone there. They drive-through strip clubs. It's a thing. It's,
It is a
what do you think
thing.
about that?
I when Christine told us that, I was again not surprised, but then I was like, but how does that work? Of course, my mind is thinking, how do the logistics work? And then I thought, obviously, I totally support the workers because they're independent contractors and they weren't getting part of the unemployment insurance. So I totally support the workers and the power of women. But the setup of it was very strange. And then I thought to myself, so if we're sticking with the people going to strip clubs to celebrate a deal? Is it like, hey, Bob, we just closed the deal. Let's rent the stretch limo and go to the drive-through strip club. I mean, is that going to be happening? Like, I don't know. My mind just went in very various directions about what that could mean. And would that make the dividing line more clear because people aren't going to rent the stretch limo? Or would that become normal and people are doing that on end? I don't know. What did you think about it?
I thought it was a bit much. I mean, I'm not for the strip clubs, in general. Like, let's just leave that behind. But I'm also, I think I mentioned this last week. I'm not for like golf, and that's
right.
I'm being generous with that because I will go play golf. You just won't like the experience. Right. as a buyer, as a business colleague, and I'll go. I'll be completely transparent in the idea that I'm not good at golf and that you're not going to like this experience. But yeah, I will totally go play golf with you. And it's not because I'm, I don't think women, that perception that women can't golf, because women are great at golf. Mm-hmm. There are many women who are great at lots of different sports, but that's just me. And every single person is an individual. And so this second part of this series is going into sports, and that preconception, right? That while I'm not good at golf, there are many women out there who are amazing at it. While while I enjoy baseball, my hand-eye coordination is not great, but I like to run. This idea of the preconceptions around sports and sales is something you and I have talked about a lot. Just share your thoughts on that.
Going back to the article about the venture capital, when you and I were first chatting about me being on your show, and I was like, oh, I don't know, what should we talk about? And you said, well, I've observed that you have to stick up for women in sports a lot. And similar to the other experiences, it's become so ingrained in my psyche and my persona that it didn't seem odd to me that I could perpetually have to say, hey, women were athletes too, and women are sports fans. So I found it ironic that the very conversation we had about this show completely exemplifies the situation. So I do feel that recently, in a group of very seemingly empathetic people, and I know it's an education process that will continue to evolve with people like yourself speaking out and continuing to resource and provide resources. But there were three examples where there was a post where someone said, hey, the guys are going to watch, the dads will get to watch the NFL on Sunday. I'm like, what about the moms? I think the female audience for the NFL is like 40%. And then there was another post where it said, what are the lessons you learned in sports and how can you apply them to business? And it was many, many men referenced. And granted, that might be the knowledge the person had, and that's okay. But women played sports too. Like from Title IX, women in high school play they're 45% of the student athletes. Like that's half of the population playing, half of the athletes are women playing in high school. And then the third example was like a sports analogy. I was on maybe a round table or an interactive webinar, and someone said, hey, they made a sports analogy. The men will know what I'm talking about. And I thought, because my new life on LinkedIn here and meeting people like you, I was like, hey, I just want to interrupt for a second to say women are sports fans also. And it just, I don't know, it just took me both by surprise and also not, that there's this continued conversation about the fact that women play sports and women are sports fans, and whatever conversations are happening about them, like why are there so many sports analogies in business, and yet we can understand them, we got them, might not love them, but what is the inclusivity of the analogies and the culture and the experiences and the reference and the way that we're categorizing people? I mean, I think it just all feeds into this empathetic inclusivity conversation about how we can't just judge people and perpetuate the stereotypes of what women can do and what they like. So
exactly. Just because I can't play golf doesn't mean that there are not other women who would love it and it would be like just their thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Yeah. Just as, the U.S. soccer team, fighting for equality, and Anna just commented, yes, I played soccer all through high school and university. That, yeah, that's amazing. That knowledge that women can be athletes too.
Right.
Women can, they have the drive and, to really elevate themselves into sports. And
Right.
they're constantly fighting for that equal playing field, right?
Right.
To be
Yeah.
able to have the same opportunities, have the same income, have the
Right.
same, even I saw a video where they were talking about how the men on the sports team got to play on grass, but the women had to play on turf, which was particularly abusive on their bodies, right?
Yeah. More dangerous.
And
Yeah.
that evolved over time.
Hmm.
Just that equal playing field in sports, and then also men acknowledging that women are athletes.
Hmm.
Maybe not me personally, you,
I know. Look,
right?
I have my letters, my letter for my letter sweater.
Yes, and
um,
that's amazing. So tell me about like your background in sports a little bit, but also
okay.
like just you and I have talked about that your nieces have connection. If you're
Hmm.
comfortable talking about that, I'd love to hear more about it.
Okay. I might cry, but okay. LinkedIn Live is for crying. Baseball is for crying. What was that movie? So yes, in high school, well, it started off very young. My mom was a PE teacher. My dad was a coach. I took my very, very first steps on a lacrosse field when I was 8 months old. I grew up playing all sorts of sports. In high school, I played tennis and I played volleyball. And I don't want to come across as arrogant saying this, but I was the first female to win the Spirit of East Islip Award, which is an academic, athletic, leadership, and community service award. Every other person in the history of time had been a man and a football player, and I was the first female to win. And then 4 years later, my sister won. Yes.
That's
And then
amazing.
I know, yeah. I don't know where that award is. Anyway, and then in college, I played volleyball and I dabbled in a couple other JV sports, and I was a snowboard instructor and a ski instructor. So sports have been a big part of my life. And my nieces, the reason I live in Vermont, are 8 and 12, and they are very, very active in sports. And the lessons that they're learning is, I want to take a step back and say, I know people didn't all play sports. And lately I've been having my eyes open to, if you were in the chess club, if you were in the debate club, if you were in theater, if you were in orchestra, whatever activity you did that is teaching you resilience and grit and teamwork and perseverance, like all of those are equally valuable. So I don't think we should elevate sports as a higher calling and put aside any of these other activities that people have done. I feel like that's been an eye-opening experience for me, that there's so many other, like I volunteered with my niece's school play. I'm like, oh man, there's all this teamwork going on with who's going to be on stage and stuff. Anyway, so they both play soccer. And in a very interesting, I don't know if people followed the equal pay story last year, the equal pay jerseys. So the Burlington girls soccer team, they made an equal pay jersey. They wanted to support the women's national team. And they had a game and they got so excited, they lifted their shirt and they got a yellow card. And a yellow card is the player goes out of the game. So of course the ref actually gave them the national spotlight, because then all of a sudden they were in Good Morning America and Anderson Cooper and all these different shows. And it was a big story, and we're kind of connected to it because we're all in Vermont. And my niece, the 12-year-old, went to the Megan Rapinoe soccer clinic and brought Megan her jersey and was filmed when Megan Rapinoe won the Sports Person of the Year. She was filmed by the Sports Illustrated crew. And then my 8-year-old niece, she got her jersey signed by the team. It was very emotional and awesome. So anywho.
That's an amazing story. And I love how dedicated your nieces were to that cause of equal pay. I mean, it's been a big problem in sports. It's actually a bigger problem in sports than it is in sales, to be
Right.
honest. We're all advocating for that change. Honestly, we want it across the board, not,
Right.
sales or sports. It doesn't really make a difference. It's about, at the end of the day, about being treated fairly. And
Right.
I think, thank you for sharing that story. It was amazing. Let's look at some of the comments. We've got people coming in here and giving us some feedback. We got Michelle. Okay, people calling it like they see them. Let's see.
I will say that the 8-year-old niece also ended up in a film. One of the girls on the soccer team, she's going to rule the world, and she made a movie for the Girls Rule the World film festival, and she won. And my niece is at the end when she's getting her jersey signed by the players. She had a little card that said, "My name is Mavis. Can you sign my shirt?" Oh, so cute.
Oh, that is so sweet.
So adorable.
I'm gonna have to put that link in the chat for people.
Yeah,
look
definitely.
At the comments all about the impact. I take polls and not dance on them. That's awesome. That's from Michelle.
That's amazing.
So let's see.
And I think while you're filling up some comments, like the thing that I was saying in the beginning that ties all this together is, for you personally, like what's the collective goal? All these resources, all of us talking about it, but for a person personally, why, like if something happens and it triggers you, and even though that's seeming to be overused word, like what is do the deeper dive? Like, well, why am I upset? And what is really going on here? Does it remind you of the time you have a seat at the table? Does it remind you of a time you didn't get the promotion? Does it remind you of time where you didn't get invited to we're going to go out and celebrate party? And then again, really think about, what are my values? What are the outcomes? What are the possible scenarios? And then what's the ROI on if I take an action? Like, am I the intern, like I said, who's completely disempowered? And there's going to be no upside because maybe the behavior's not going to change, or I'm in a position where I can create change. And then you find that own path for yourself. Like where's your power, and where are your values, and where are your desired outcomes? Like where do those all align, and where you feel comfortable taking action? And the more people that take action, hopefully is for other people to take action as well.
Well, yeah, and I think these stories are important because they create awareness, right? They make people who may not realize that there's necessarily something wrong with this, at least pause to consider their actions next time, right? Just like the posts that are very that are about sports and the sales analogies, which is valid, right? Because it is a performance-based thing, right? So the sales analogies are valid. I'm just women are athletes too,
right?
And they achieve. And there's a recent HBR article about how women actually make quota more often than men, and so we are the athletes, right? And so when you're in your language not being inclusive to women, what you're doing is you're not recognizing us for the contributions that we make, and it's unfair. It's not as unfair as the woman of the soccer team having to play on turf will destroy their bodies, right? But it's still not fair. I mean, there's a video I posted in the events from that story, right? And they were making like a third of what the men's team were making, right? And but playing almost an additional season for how many more games they were playing,
and the success they had.
That's a lot.
I have a question for you, Jen. That's a lot. So where are you finding your line? Like you're looking for new opportunities, and you're having a ton of great conversations with people, and you're super passionately committed to being vocal about women's collective power and support and inclusivity. And where are you finding the line on like your search and the broader goals of your life with your passion for being a voice for women?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
If you feel comfortable talking.
Yeah, it's funny because I had a conversation with Justin Welsh about this yesterday. He graciously gave me some of his time because I had put out a survey asking about my brand, right, and how people view me and define my brand. So it was half sales and leadership with heart, half sales development, half just sheer women power, right? And it was interesting to get that feedback. Well, he's like, well, if you're looking for an opportunity, you really need to focus. Like, who are your personas? You need to be consistent in what you're doing. The thing is, and I said to him, I'm not just looking for any job. I'm looking for a job where an opportunity where I'm going to thrive, where I can, bring my enthusiasm, my best self. So when I'm talking about sales and leadership with heart, I'm talking about, where I'm going to be able to thrive and
Right.
bring as much value as I can, where my voice is going to be celebrated. So that's, I take a portion of my time to talk about these women, women in sales, and where
Mm.
how we can elevate other people and empower other women, right?
Right.
And then I spend a portion of my time talking about just leadership and, my
Yeah.
knowledge about sales. And I think that eventually that combination of topics will get me
Right.
where I'm trying to go, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, again, we've only known each other a few months, but I'm on the train, wherever your train is going. Like I'm on your train. I'm with you. So,
Oh, that
I
makes
feel,
that warms my
yeah,
heart. Thank
and I
you.
feel like maybe in the moment, similar to like when you're thinking about the deeper dive of your emotions and why you might be feeling something about certain things. It might not be that in the moment you feel this, but maybe you're pre-screening the companies that aren't going to want to be part of your journey, and they're not going to be a fit for you, but you're finding out early on because you're just not even getting any traction with them, and
Right.
you're weeding them out, and that's ultimately, maybe it takes you a little bit longer, but you're going to find the greatest thing. You're being very rigorous about your process, and you're being very thorough about the way that you're approaching it, and being consistent. Like, to me, your internal, external, is all very consistent, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very clear what you're bringing to the table and who you are. So
Thank you so much. That really means a lot. That's great. Okay, so we got to look at some. So
oh, the party bus. Wait, what's
we
going
got
on
to
with the
go
party
to
bus?
some of the comments here. So party buses, of course. So party buses. Can you imagine the drive-through strip club, and there's going to be a party bus?
I mean, I guess that takes my stretch limo one level higher, and I've been on party buses, not to strip clubs, not to outdoor strip clubs. Um, I mean, that, yeah, I feel like a different scenario would happen, but then I feel like we're going to go not safe
Yeah.
for work, and I don't want to. I
Let's.
don't want to go too far down that road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's. I'm Nick Bennett is terrible at golf. Well,
yeah.
I feel you, buddy.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think, and I was going to say that before. I listened in on the other side of sales. Did a LGBTQ session last week, and it was
Mm-hmm.
so interesting because it was like, talk about adversity, like all the challenges that people have had to overcome to announce and like feel like they have to announce their sexual identity, and the perceptions like, oh, we're going to go, even if they were going to go to the strip club, if you're a gay man, well, that's going to be still not that awesome for you either, right? Or it's like all these different perceptions of things, and people are like playing golf, or we got to go to the cigar bar, we're going to go to the hotel lounge, or whatever it is. So I think just continuing to open people's eyes to, as you and I've been talking about, the inclusivity, as opposed to these perceptions and pockets of people fitting in boxes that exclude others. So
And you mentioned cigar clubs. So in
oh yes, I mentioned that on
case
purpose.
of irony, right? Sheer irony, right?
Yeah,
I used to manage cigar bars that included cigar clubs.
yeah,
And so we would sell corporate memberships to companies who would pay, $5,000 a year for their executives to be able to use our
yeah,
smoke filled room so
yeah.
that they can network. And, there weren't typically a lot of women back there,
Mm-hmm.
other than the few times I did have a woman come knock on my door and say, "Hey, I want to get in there." I'd be like, "Yeah, you're totally in." um, how much? Yeah, let's give you a discount.
Yeah, he gave
So
a special rate.
exactly, and so the irony of now, right? Later, that's what actually inspired me to even start looking at B2B sales in my career, is because I used to see how, people
Right.
would get the memberships and they would come and do
Mm-hmm.
this networking, right, in the cigar club. And you can never tell
Right.
what they were selling. And you can never tell exactly,
Yeah.
what it was, but you could see the relationship building. You could see
Yeah.
the contracts
Yeah.
being signed.
They're a bond.
It was
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just like the basics of relationship building, right? And getting
Right.
your deals done. And that's why
Yeah.
people pay to come to the prestigious cigar club to sit in the leather seats and smoke filled air. And, my team would sell it to them.
Right.
And now, right, I'm talking about that old boys club behavior.
Yeah.
That all started in the cigar clubs.
Yeah.
So it is
I know, it's
a
like it's
sort of
come
a
full
small,
circle.
yeah, it does control circle. So let's
Yeah.
see. We've got some more comments. Not all men like sports either. It's not hard to find common ground. That is true. You know, there are many times that I've heard from men that some of the like the sales bro behavior where you're going for happy hour and it's all, you know, very one way is not
Right.
appealing to all men.
Right,
Right.
exactly. Like I was saying before, not all the men are going to play golf or they're like whatever. Like that's this elevation of sports as the be all and end all of the only experience for certain select people is, as much as I love sports and it's been my life and it's my passion and I value it so much, it's not everything. It's one path forward and one way that people enjoy their life and develop leadership skills and obviously athletic skills too. But
okay, so we have a question here from Kathy. I'm in marketing, not sales, so I haven't had this experience. Very insightful. So if you're calling on someone and they suggest golf and you say you don't play it, let's do lunch instead. You have found you don't get the meeting. Is that incredible and sad? No, you can still get the meeting. It's just that at that point you have to make a choice, right? First of all, I'm not going to put someone through this terrible golf experience with me, right? That's not going to create an optimal buyer experience for my buyer, right? So what are my options? I can suggest I buy lunch at the club.
Right.
I could, I would never, you know, I learned this lesson the hard way of sending a colleague who is good at golf to go steal my sale. That was not a good idea. That was a lesson learned.
Yeah, nope.
You know, I could suggest another way to build on that relationship to network. You know, there are a number of different things you can do to sort of get out of that situation, especially if you know that you know, it's just not going to be great.
Yeah. I feel like it's harder if it's one-on-one. I feel like it's not easy, but it's more manageable. But it's when a group of like 8 people or 7 plus you are going. And then that's when I've always felt like, luckily, when I lived in Colorado near the Olympic Training Center, I'm like, I got to learn golf, man. I got to get. So I did. It was actually a great life lesson because it took a lot of patience and perseverance. And people who seem to have different ages and skills or whatever were great at it, and I was terrible. So it was a very humbling experience. But then I got okay at it. But it was still this thing where the very first time I went to the 5-star hotel, the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, and I was terrible. And luckily they were sponsors that we'd known a while and it wasn't such a big deal. But I think I found it harder to navigate that one as a big group outing or as a big group situation. One-on-one is felt a little more manageable to me. So
yeah. And I went and practiced golf and I did go on a golf outing, and that was really truly hard experience for everyone involved. And I will be forever apologizing to that person.
Yeah, well, you know, you gave it a shot. So there you go. Yeah. So Jen, I'm so more question. Okay.
Get to some of these starting out in finance. I just thought I had to go along to get along. Drinking way too much.
Oh, I mean, we could have a whole nother show on that. The Wall Street, the situations I've been in on the Wall Street. I mean, that could be a whole nother long show. But yes, I agree. The drinking and I worked on a trading floor with 700 people and there were only 50 women. So, I mean, terrible things happened there and outside of there, and it all was together. But a lot of it involved drinking to excess and people making terrible decisions. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I've done this as well. I mean, I was challenged to beer pong once for a contract.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did I play beer pong? I did play beer pong.
Yeah.
Did I win? I won, but you know what? I shouldn't have done it. It wasn't right. I drank too much. I was,
and then that's a whole nother series. Like then your own self-preservation and your safety. You put yourself anyway. That's a topic for another day.
That's a topic for another day. So we've got. I'm just gonna grab a couple more of these comments because we're actually over time already.
Yeah, we are. I know. Yeah. So
golfers are just as adverse to non-golfers as the other way around. You can find an alternate to do, and they can find 3 other people to blow 5 hours with. That is so true, and that's what I started to learn to do. But it took some time for me to, there was early on in my career, you know, when I was young and like,
yeah, you're disempowered. You don't have any
pipeline, and I'm like, you know, I'm just going to go, especially having spent time in the cigar industry, right?
Yeah.
So I was familiar with sort of that world. I mean, I would send, you know, girls for like cutting cigars and stuff on golf trips and things like that.
Yeah.
And, like, I was very familiar with that. And there was a certain kind of appeal to when I saw that B2B relationship building. So it was like, now that I'm here, like, it took me a long time to sort of grow and evolve to understand, you know, where I should be, what I'm comfortable with, and how to embrace being myself and my values, right? And that did not happen for me overnight. That was
no, and again, I think it's like there are a couple of things too. There's the age thing. There's the I'm new, and I don't think, at least for me, 20, 30, whatever long ago was I started out, there wasn't all this information available. Like, you were in your own little world with your own little team at your own little company, and even if the broader Wall Street was, you know, Wall Street is a big world, but you weren't connected to everyone, and there weren't all these resources, there weren't all these support groups, and there weren't all these conversations happening. You were like, you felt very alone. So anyhow,
no, and that's how I felt too, very alone.
Yeah. I want to hype up the your next guest.
Okay.
Please tune in the next few weeks, because we have Erin, and we have Shannon, and then we have Alexine, and we have Gwendolyn. And I don't know what order they're all coming in, so check out Shannon's page, but they're all fabulous, amazing women talking about fantastic, informative things.
Yes, and then there's also Women in Sales Month, so we've got happy hour coming.
Oh, the happy hour.
14th. And October 30th to sort of wrap up the celebration and talk about like actionable things to keep the conversation moving forward for Women in Sales Month. You know, it's like Women in Sales Month to Women in Sales is like Christmas. It's like, let's celebrate all month long. So it's awesome, and I'm all about it.
Yeah, I know. It was great timing for you to get your LinkedIn live show just before. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for encouraging me to get out of my comfort zone and come on my very first LinkedIn live show. It was very, very fun, and I really appreciated it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for coming, people. Yay.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate your questions and your comments, and thank you for joining us. So take care.
Thank you.